I'll get into a little bit more details of what these are. So load balancers, we know what load balancers are in general, but I would like still to specify how it helps in scalability. So for example, let's say we have 4 servers to handle our application. So how do we know? And we have, like, in, for example, let's say for a company or for a website like Amazon, how it handles request users, especially in a season like in a festive season where there's a lot of customers doing a lot of shopping and buying and stuff. So there are a lot of user hits per second. So how do they handle? So just to visualize the whole thing, let's say if Amazon is having 1,000 hits per second, so it will need servers which can handle that. And let's say if my server, I'm just assuming, like we have 10 servers and my servers can maximum take like 100 to 200 hits or users per second. So we need to have a way so that my 10 servers can be used optimally, wherein each of the 100 users from the 1,000 ones can be distributed evenly to the 10 servers. And how do we do it? The load balancers are come into picture here. How they will, once they receive a user request, it will check which are the servers that are empty, or where to redirect the user request. So in our case, I'm just citing a very simple example wherein I'm just saying that whichever server is empty or of less use, to that particular server the load is transferred, so that it is a balanced load throughout the set of servers that the organization or the application has. So that is how the load balancers work. I just said one of the ways it works ahead, but there are many other scenarios wherein it considers not just the least occupied server. It might even say that this is a regular user or frequent user. Then there might be cache thing that comes into picture. We might be storing those details into caches and sessions, so that later on we can use the same session data in terms of cookies, etc., to for a faster experience. Then as I said, the embedded databases also that helps. So moving on, we'll talk about like what are the new things, other things that can be taken into consideration. um, so when I say design pattern itself is a very and there are a lot of job roles that are offered in the current market. And to talk about those, like where exactly can we use this skill, and how can a fresher or an experienced person be very much dedicated or engaged in such sort of activities. I've just listed down a little bit of the roles that are in used or that are very much prevalent in the current industry. For example, a beginner can be a system analyst, wherein a system analyst can also read requirements of an application, and from the high level they can design a very basic system. How user is going to take data, how is it going to be stored, how is it going to be showed to the user back again on the UI, how it is going to be handled, will there be batch systems at the back or not. Similarly, if there's a higher experience, for example, if there's a software developer and engineer, it can also suggest the kind of technology stack that might be useful, because the experience will help him or her to understand what kind of technology will help to build a very user friendly interface. Then also, if the requirement changes tomorrow, then how can we change the design so that it is easier for both the developer at the back end and also to the user at the front end, or the user who's interacting or interfacing the application. That also This also helps the developer to develop the interface such that it is more easier for the customer. Then more higher levels, we have consultants. These consultants are have basically around 9 to 10 years of experience, and how they help is they try to bring such sort of projects to the organization and advise the clients to use certain sort of softwares to meet those objectives that they require in terms of business, so that it is easier for both the client to get the to understand, to make it easier for the user to explain how it's going to be turn out like, and how they're going to use it, make it more user friendly, and at the back end it is also easier for the developer to develop it, to procure the tools that is required for faster development. Uh, so there'll be a smooth transition from the development to the final marketing launch, and the consultants play a very big role in it, because their experience helps to manage the two effortlessly, because they bridge the gap between the developers and the end users, and this helps out to bring out a very nicely designed interface. Moving on, we'll talk about more senior level role and its functions. So these are basically senior software engineers, and these are also the ones who are basically managing the teams. So when you manage a team, you need to guide them. You need to say them, okay, this team is going to handle the UI part. This team is going to handle the transaction to the DB to and fro part, and this team is going to, like just handle the batch processing. How they're going to deal with the sale data, or maybe a bulk data, file data. So they need to know how the larger picture looks like from a very high level, and hence having a knowledge in the design system, the design patterns will help them to guide the teams better. The experience will come really handy at that place. Then there are architects. These architects are nothing but they are the designers. So what happens is, for example, if my company has got a new project, or it is saying me, okay, from we want the client wants this, and we have the database of Oracle DB, and we can have these much read operations, write operations, and you need to submit them into a file structure. So they need this data on a daily basis, and this data will be arriving in your database like at night, and by morning you will have to send them to the another client. So how are you going to deal with this? There's a time span. Then they have to understand that, okay, we at night time it will be better to have batch applications, because there are not much database transaction at that time. So they help, their experience, and that experience of stack development stack also helps in building a very healthy design system, and provide guidance to the developers, so that a very neat application turns out. Also, this also helps in building scalable systems, because they will know what works and what does not work. Then there are lead designers. These are expert with documentation basically. So they just document the designs in order to provide a visual look. So how is the visual look coming out, or how will the final output be looking like once it is out? This individual is well versed with the designing tools. Sorry. Then there's senior consultant. The senior consultants will have basically the final word, if in case if there's a final choice, if there are two tools doing the same sort of job. For example, if I've got Eclipse to do that job, and again there's another IDE to do the job, which one is going to be with the final say? The senior consultant can have the final say which tool is going to be kept. Maybe in terms of money that the organization can expense out. In terms of design, it can say that, okay, if I am going through, for example, if it's a cloud application, I can have data in DynamoDB, I can have data again at Athena as well. So which one will be better? The person knowing the constraints that the organization has and the application has, they can take a very well informed decision what kind of design might work, and they will accordingly provide a similar design pattern to follow. I hope this is making sense. Please drop again your comments in case if you want more data about this. Then moving on to more top management ones. So when as it is understood, the top management ones are the ones who are more into, higher level, like how is the project going to be delivered. So we have got DynamoDB taking like 1,000 hits per day, and it will be able to handle maximum 20,000, 2,000 hits per day. So will it be able to take the application, and will we be able to deliver in a month or no? So these kind of decisions will be taken by project and also project manager, sorry, and delivery manager. So these people will have, since they have a very better informed idea about how the design of the system is working, they take their say there how to handle the project, and how long will a project take to for completion. And they can also, in case of a design change, they can also ask for an efficient time increase. Similar other roles of product managers, they handle more of clients also along with the internal team. Then there's chief technology officer, which is basically continuously, the job is here basically to continuously ensure that all possible outcomes are enabled with technology. Then there's engineering director. The engineering director is more so like CTO, but is works with CTO and also with the development team, and like pushes them continuously to get them on continuous delivery mode. And every week we have some sort of deadlines to show to the engineering director. Then there's integration manager. We all know what integration manager is. It's basically having a bird's eye, like how is the design working, how is it working out. So it will connect with the project plus the product manager and see how things are going, so that the whole process is very smooth. Before we move on to like the next last segment of this, we will talk about a little case study of using design patterns. We here I'll be talking about a database, and when we will see how, when a database is made scalable, what kind of challenges does it face, and what patterns can we apply so that we can move very smoothly to the next phase. So I'll start, list out what the case study is. Assume that you have built a startup which offers ride sharing at a cheap cost. We know what Ola, Uber does today. So let's say we have something of that sort. Initially, when you start, you target a city and hardly have tens of customers after your initial advertisement. Fine. You save all customers, trips, locations, bookings data, and customer trip history in the same database, because we have very less customers. We are saving in the same database, and most likely in a single physical machine. There is no fancy caching or big data pipeline to solve problems, since your app is very new. This is perfect for your use case at this moment, since there are very few customers and your system hardly books one trip in 5 minutes, for example. But as time goes, most people start signing up in your system, since you are the cheapest service in the market. And thanks to your promotion and ads, you start booking, say 10 bookings per minute, and slowly the number increases to 20, 30 bookings per minute. I'm saying it's like per 60 seconds, you are having 30 bookings. So you need to understand that, how the database is going to handle. So at this point of time, you realize that the system has started performing poorly. API latency has increased a lot, and some transactions deadlock or starve, and eventually they fail. Your app is taking more time to respond, causing customer dissatisfaction. At this stage, what can you do to make it more scalable? Or to say it the least, how are you going to solve the dissatisfaction problem? How are you going to decrease the starving? How are you going to decrease the API latency and making it more smoother interaction? So let's see how what kind of patterns we can apply so that we move to a very steady application experience. So let's say the first pattern that you see, for example, you have reached for around from tens to customers, you have reached around 1,000 customers, and then they're like 1,000 hits per minute. So how are you going to do that? So the first thing that comes to your mind is, okay, my data transaction is the most heavy task in my application. So that is the one thing that I will target and optimize. So the first pattern would be query optimization. You will use more join queries in a way that it is more, easily breakable, easily that can be easily broken down and handled. So you'll use more join clauses and inner joins and stuff. Then to use this also, you can also use connection pooling. so to get into connection pooling is basically a kind of pool where we have a set number of database connections, and whenever a user hits to the application, the database connection that it wants to make can be picked from the connection pool instead of creating a new connection altogether. The best point here, or why do we use connection pooling, is once the user completes its transaction, the connection pool can automatically go into the pool and say it's active again, so that another user can use, and it closes by itself once the work is completed. Even if it does not close, at least we do not have too many open connections. In general scenarios, what happens is if every user is using a connection and forgets to close the connection or whatsoever of that sort, then there's a lot of connections that come up and block the system. That will slow down the system to a lot. Connection pooling helps us there to make it more synchronous. Then let's say we have done this and this works fine, and your system is coming up and it's very smooth now. Again, so your whole application moves to another country. For example, it's more famous now, and it has moved to Asia. So there are a lot of countries in Asia that are using it up. So somehow your server systems are not coping with it. Sorry. So it's not able to cope with it up. So what do you do now? You need to now vertical scale. So when I say vertical scale, we need to increase the kind of power that each server has. So you need to increase its RAM, or maybe its disk capacity, and you handle it. So this is the next step, and somehow it solves to a problem to an extent. Now if it increases to another level, you still see that, okay, if I'm moving to another continent, or maybe then there are problems of query, for example, in a trip, you will see that the write operations, for when we say the write operations means when I've closed a trip, I have paid the money. So that paying of the money, how much it is paid, is also being stored into the database. That is the writing operation. The reading operation says that, okay, this particular user has completed this trip, the payment has been done, and the driver receives those messages. So the major part that I want to focus here is there are two parts here: the write instruction and the read instruction. The write instruction will always take more time than the read instruction. In case of a larger audience, when we have, then we need to be sure that um, the right instruction should complete in time. Otherwise, what's going to happen is, for example, I get down from my cab and I say to the driver, okay, I'm paying it through my GPay, and the reader and user, the driver checks it on his mobile through a read query that, okay, whether the payment has been done or not. Maybe the driver will receive the read response faster than me doing the right response. I hope this is clear. So what will happen is the driver might not get the right read response, because it is getting a faster read response. Until then, maybe the write hasn't completed. So we need to make sure that the write also completes on time. So how we are going to do here is we are going to the command query, we are going to distribute in such a way that the write transaction will be carried out in more closer servers, more high performing servers, and the read queries or the read databases, since they're not using a lot of resources, they can be moved to another simple servers. This is how we can handle the next problem. Then we can use the multi-primary replication. For example, again, there are major data like the trip taken by which customer from which place to which place, and how much has been paid. These are more important than how much length of kilometers has been covered, or other logistic data. So we can segregate this data and move into primary and secondary, and then we can focus on replication on only primary ones, so that we have these data at a faster rate than the secondary ones. We can store them into two sets of database, or maybe two sets of database tables, so that we have faster access to important data first. uh, Again, so this is a fourth pattern. Until then, we are moving maybe over to more continents across the globe, and then we might understand that, okay, so I'm my server is in Singapore, but a user is in US. So there's a lot of lag when the servers are being accessed through Singapore. So we might have to replicate that. So what we're going to do is we are partitioning those data into tables such that, you know, we have certain set of tables only for the US and certain only for the Asia ones, and we have different servers taking care of each other, which are independent of each other and not touching, each other data, or maybe they are not overlapping them in any way. So this is going to help us there when we have such latency in data fetching. Apart from this, we also understand that once these servers occur, we might see that, okay, still there are latencies, there are many user hits per second. Now how are we going to handle, the application is not able to handle. So we would want to replicate the whole set of servers. And when I say replicate the whole set of servers, we're basically adding more power to the whole system by terms of more CPU power, more scalable resources, like more RAM, more systems. That is called as horizontal scaling. So this is going to help us more scale in terms of power, you know accessing and handling more user requests per second. Then the problem that might arise is that still, the data center at Canada is not able to handle, or still having a lag, because there's only one data center in the whole USA section, and the Canada and Ohio is having issues. So we might have to set up more data centers and partition them according to the area, and that is how we are going to handle the scalability thing there. So I hope this case study is making sense to you. This is a very interesting case study I found, and if there are more suggestions to this, like what next patterns can be used, I'll be very much happy to take them. Moving on, they're very simple, as we have talked about, like what are the job roles. So we'll also talk about like how to get into these domains. We are basically from IT industries. Most of us are software developers. So once you start developing, you'll get to know what kind of systems are needed for a well-fledged application. And once you get to know them, the next step would be to how to design them. What kind of things happen when you increase the users, when you increase the load. So that is something that should come into your mind. And for this domain, for the different experiences, we have design systems engineer, then we have systems designer, and we have project managers, as we said, who handle such design systems and takes projects and designs them according to the constraints that they have. Similar are the product managers and delivery managers. These are the set of references that I have used throughout the applications.